Joey and friends here to save the day. Talking about dolls and making our own way. Talking to visionaries, dreamers, and kin. Anyone can play here cause we all fit in. From Darcy to Body, from Dawn to Glimmer. We talk about world as the lights go dimmer. Follow us to a playground filled with stories. And let us entertain you with tales of our glories.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joey Dollmaker Versaw, and I am here with Bradley Justice Yarbrough. How are you doing, Bradley?
I'm great, Joey. Thanks for having me. I am excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. And I'm really excited to pick your brain on some Barbie knowledge and just to talk dolls.
Sounds great.
So growing up, what was it that what was your first doll experience or knowing that you wanted to have dolls in your life?
Probably around age 4 or 5. One summer we spent the summers with extended family. So my cousin Carolyn brought her Barbie sleeping keep case full of dolls and clothes, and we played Barbie from like morning until night. And I knew then that I loved Barbie, and she had all of those early 70s dolls that were just so amazing. And that was a fun summer. I really loved that experience and knew that Barbie needed to be in my life. When I left for that summer, I think she realized I enjoyed that so much that she gave me her twist and turn Stacy. I later found out that it was her older sister. So, but she gave me that doll, and that to this day is one of my favorite dolls. It was like the short red flip hair Stacy. So Stacy's always been a favorite.
I love that. That's so cool. When was it that you kind of realized that this was going to be something that you were going to collect or be into?
Around I think it was probably 1982. There used to be a syndicated television show called PM Magazine, and they would do like tons of human interest stories. And they interviewed a lady named Sybil DeWine,
Oh
and
yeah.
she had written the book, The Collector's Encyclopedia of Barbie Dolls. And so they interviewed her, and suddenly it was the light bulb went off that what I was playing with and loving and enjoying was actually collectible. And so that made me kind of change focus. I saved up my allowance and bought that book, and I still refer to that book. So it's kind of been ever since, and I'm just kind of discovering that there were not only doll collectors but Barbie collectors. So that was sort of like that zenith moment.
That's so funny because that kind of was my first pivotal moment of I found that book in the library. I probably was like 10 or 11 or something when I had found that book, and it became my Bible of and
Yes,
I
yes.
kept on checking, I was a kid, and I don't know, I guess I didn't think to ask my mom if we could track down a copy of this book for myself. So I was just continuously checking that book out,
Uh,
and I would go in to return it or scan it to return it. And I would say, is there anyone else on the waiting list for this book? And I would literally recheck it back out and take
love
it back
that.
home.
I have memorized so many things from that book, and there are dolls that was just at that point there were only a few color pages in that particular book, and I still refer to that as the way she dressed and styled some of those dolls. Like certain dolls need to be in certain costumes, so I still kind of do that. So
I love that. So did you grew up in the South?
I grew up in the South, and I had an older brother, a younger brother, and my parents, um, I don't think they really had a problem with me playing dolls. I got dolls and that sort of thing. However, I don't think they were overly enthusiastic about it. And I did even as a kid realize that it was sort of a taboo thing that I was doing, but I also loved playing with Barbie and dolls so much that I didn't really care.
Right.
So I
That was going to
I
be my next
you know
question was how did your
yeah
family and your brothers and your mother and dad like handle it?
I think that, like I said, I think they were a little bit not as enthusiastic as I was. They were not as enthusiastic as I was. However, I think my dad became a little more obliging when we saw that television show, and then we discovered that there was a book and that these dolls had value. I think my dad sort of saw that as a moment of, maybe there's something tangible to this. So
Right.
that became a connection that we had. So
I love that. That's so cool. So I guess I would love to know a little bit about your journey through because you have that I've experienced a lot of the same where we were pre-internet,
yeah.
collectors. And so it was a whole different world for us collecting pre-internet.
Yes. Oh my God. It's funny because I was just with my nieces, and my nieces are a bit of collectors, and so we were talking about that, and I said, well, they used to run an ad in a thing called Collectors United, which was like a collectors newspaper, and you could send off for a list, and you had to send a self-addressed stamped envelope, and they put the list in the envelope, and I went through the whole process of what it was like to buy something without seeing a picture, without, just going on a verbal or written description, sending a money order or a check, and praying you weren't getting it. Was so crazy to think about how we had to do it back then. And it took like a month to make like a transaction. It was kind of crazy. So um these young whippersnappers just
I
don't know how good they've
know.
got it. So
I still have stacks, like stacks of Paul David catalogs, of ordering, dolls from him.
yes,
And it was, there were once in a while there'd be a picture if there was like a new Barbie out, and
right.
whatnot, and they would advertise for it. But mostly it was just lists, and it would be like Darcy, brown hair, blah, and you'd just be like hoping and praying that the doll that
Yes.
you got was, decent.
I I did that so many times, and there were so many times that I was so overwhelmed with how amazing it was, and there were times that I was very disappointed. So, but
Yes,
you know what?
yes.
It was the process we had at that moment.
Exactly. One of my best moments I think ever, I had bought a lot from somebody through, I think it was like Nicolads or something was so weird like that. And it was this older lady, and I had bought her collection, but it was just like a lot of stuff. And I think she charged me like $145, and the shipping wasn't too bad, but it was literally like Fashion Photo Christie,
Oh,
Superstar
wow.
Christie. Like there were so many good Superstar Christies and other Barbies that were Superstar era in this lot, and costumes and clothes. And that was probably one of my best, like, ever experiences because it was a very blind. I was kind of like had this inner feeling of like, ooh, $145. Should I spend this, and on this collection, and what does that entail? And it turned out to be a really wonderful experience.
Those moments are few and far between, but they're so great when they happen.
Yeah,
I've always loved having those sort of serendipitous moments. So, it's probably been 7 or 8 years ago, but I had either written something or I was tagged in something, but someone kind of hunted me down through Facebook, and it's like, my aunt was a seamstress at Mattel, and we have all of this stuff, and it sounds like you know what this stuff is. Will you buy it? So they called, we exchanged phone numbers. He called me, and we talked and talked and talked and tried to get as much information. And so finally he just said, I'm going to put it in a box and ship it to you, and you just send me a check for whatever it's worth. And, I kept expecting just to get like, a box full of like Oreo cookie fun outfits and some
right, right.
polyester fabric. And it ended up being like a box that had like samples and prototypes and fabrics, and that's so it's like you never know what someone's going to get in touch with you and what's going to come through the mail. So I kind of love those moments.
Definitely. And you had something happen just recently. I was reading about the Barbie compact.
Yes. Oh my gosh. News travels fast. I traveled to Japan, and while I was there, I actually bought like a Ziploc bag, and they have a store there called Mandarake they specialize in vintage and collectible everything. And so in like their fashion doll section, I bought this um like Ziploc bag that had all kinds of like fashion doll purses in it. And it was like Takara Jenny purses and Leica stuff. But there were
Stuff I
some,
would love.
oh, well, and I love that too. So I was like, yeah, $10 for this whole bag of stuff. And there were a couple vintage Barbie purses in it. And so I literally bought it, and it was a whirlwind trip in Japan. We were just buying like crazy. I would say it's like supermarket sweet, just throw it all in the cart and I'll take it.
Yes.
But when I got home, I opened that up and was just kind of going through to see what I had. And there was a little white plastic vinyl Barbie clutch. And when I picked it up, it rattled. And so I opened it and there was the compact. And
Wow.
so I always had joked and said I would never pay what people sell that for. I would never pay that. And I have had just about every single thing in the world of vintage Barbie. And I had half of the compact. I had found like the lid of it broken off and like behind the drawer in a case or something. So I said one day I'll find it. So I found it and was very excited and kind of held it close to my heart. And then at my recent discovery event that we had here in Durham, North Carolina, I gave it away.
I
So
heard that. I heard that. That was so sweet.
So, sometimes I always joke and say that I'm kind of sometimes the catch and release kind of collector. Sometimes I enjoy the hunt, and the pursuit more than I enjoy actually owning it. So that was like a fun moment. I can say that I've officially had it, and I think I made another collector very happy.
Oh,
So,
definitely. I can't tell you how many purses I've squeezed, how many cases I've pulled the cardboard thing and turned upside down. And I found some really great things like Arabian Nights necklace inside a case,
right,
in the back, or I found a few pearl necklaces and different random little accessories, maybe a mod earring or something.
right.
And it's always kind of like exciting, like, ooh, what secrets does this case hold
Yeah,
that people didn't realize? I think when I was maybe even like 12 or 13, and we used to go to flea markets or different things like that, I would go to, if ever I saw a Barbie case, I'd turn it upside down and pull the drawer and give it a little tap or whatever,
like
just to
what's
see,
hiding in here?
and that would like make my decision on whether or not I was buying the case or not.
Right.
But
Totally, totally. I love that.
yeah.
So that was exciting, but yeah, I love the pursuit. I always say that I'm more of a scholarly collector. I always want to know how it came to be, why it came to be, what process was behind its manufacture. So that's always been kind of my pursuit. Having collected, I started collecting when I was about 11 or 12. So I've literally collected for like 45 years. I'm 56 years old.
Yeah,
So,
don't add.
yeah, I was going to say, let's not make me any older than I am. But
Right.
so for 45 years, and I've bought, I have had just about every single thing. There's very little that I have not had. So, I think once you reach a level as a collector of kind of having all of your dream dolls or that sort of thing, start expanding and seeing other things. But I decided also to kind of focus on sort of the backstory and what was going on and researching. So around 2006, I started a research project trying to discover about Charlotte Johnson. She was Barbie's first fashion designer, and started doing a lot of research because there was very little out there about her. And it was kind of a challenge because, just even trying to do any sort of genealogical sort of research, she was, the last name Johnson. I mean, that's such a common name.
Right.
But we finally made some discoveries. A research friend of mine, my friend Wendy, help make some discoveries. And so down the rabbit hole, we've been interviewing and talking to people for almost, 2 decades now about her. And so that's been something that, I enjoy discovering and learning. Sometimes the information is more important to me than the object.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really feel like with the internet and everything, I mean, the world really expanded because we were able to talk to people that work for the company or collectors worldwide, and where we kind of were stunted without the internet on our information. And it's so funny because literally every year I learn new things that people have discovered or brought or shed light on or whatnot. And
Right.
I'm like, oh my gosh, like how crazy that we didn't know this or that this is just coming out, you know?
It's
It's
crazy. It's like and that's what I love. Like every day there's like a new discovery. Somebody finds something or sees something or hears something. And it's always sort of that pursuit of more information, more knowledge. And I think that's really a great thing that, it's such a benefit to collectors that there are so many people that are doing this. And now with social media and everything, there's such a great way of sort of instantaneously sharing that. So that's
yeah.
that's been a brilliant thing. So
No, I really do love that, and I love the fact that we can have such a huge community, even though we're not in each other's backyards, we can get online
right.
and have that, camaraderie through the community, and that's really
Yeah,
nice.
and I've been able to build friendships in Japan, Australia, and France. And luckily with the internet, you don't run up a long distance telephone bill like we used
Right,
to.
right.
It's really great for collecting. I did over the last 2 years, I've done a lot of research in Japan, and so being able to talk to fellow researchers there extensively and have them share information and vice versa, it's it's been a great uh, that the ability to do that is so welcome. I love that.
I'd love it too. It's really amazing. I think that the fact that we're still learning about vintage stuff, stuff that you would think we would already know everything because there's been all these years of collecting in between, but there's still stuff surfacing. We're still learning, and it's
Yeah,
just amazing.
and there's also a lot of stuff that the generation of collectors that originally collected that, the generation of people that originally worked on some of that, they have passed away and or aged out. And so some of that stuff is coming back on the market, or their family is like, I've got this file cabinet full of stuff that, what do we do with this? And I've purchased many situations like that of like, a file box full of stuff I bought someone that worked at Mattel as an accountant from the mid 60s to like 71, probably when Mattel went through its sort of drama there with the the Ruth and Elliot Handler getting ousted, sort of thing. They were probably an accountant at that point or part of that team. But it's funny because it answers so many questions of like, what was the budget for like an outfit? What was the wholesale on something? And so there's things that we never knew as collectors that only suddenly we're seeing that information. It's really kind of interesting to kind of discover that.
Yeah. And I think it's so funny as a doll collector, we kind of go through this journey where, like, in the beginning, when I was a kid and because I started collecting when I was about 12, I think, because I wasn't allowed to have it, as a
Right.
child. And then, my mom had gone through a divorce with my stepfather and things kind of loosened up a bit. And I started to like collect and I talked my mom into buying me Bob Mackey's first Barbie, the gold,
Oh wow. Yeah.
and I remember like $125, and my
Wow.
mom bought it for me. And I remember the day the UPS man came with the big, it was
That is
very
awesome.
exciting. It was such a big event. But I think it's interesting because I know for my own journey, it's like in the beginning, you kind of you want everything because you haven't had it or experienced it.
Right,
So you're just kind of like buying whatever and also buying broken things, TLC things,
right,
whatnot. And then as you kind of go on, you have so much stuff and you're like, oh, I need to curate,
yes,
and like, and then I'm like, oh, now I only buy very minty, things. I would rather spend
right,
more money on something that is like super
right,
nice than buy a cheap fixer-upper and put all this time and money into something that may or may not, bounce
right. I
back.
think as a collector, I think we all kind of go through that process of buying at a level we can afford or
Mhm.
buying at what our skill level is. And I also went through that thing of like, oh, I think I can fix this up. And then suddenly I've got like the bin of like broken dolls. And then it's like you say, well, for every 10 of those I bought, I could have just bought a really nice doll. So, curating a collection is really kind of a um something you kind of aspire to and grow into. Quantity is not necessarily the best thing, quality. And then I also say loving and enjoying what you own, because I collected and much like you bought everything. And then I arrived at a thing of like, I don't really like Ken. So I just stopped collecting Ken. I stopped collecting Skipper, and then sold them. And then I started focusing on like Barbie and Francie. And even with Barbie, I love that sort of early core, like 2 years, like 59
Mhm.
and 60. I love that, and I love the dolls for that. And then I love mod and
Mhm.
getting into that early 70s generation where I was playing with my cousin. So I sort of decided exactly what appealed to me and what I loved, and then just kind of forgot the rest of it. And so that, really kind of helped me kind of fine tune my collection. Now, what I will tell you is I always say I buy what I like, and sometimes I like too much. And sometimes I buy it and live with it for a while, and I'm like, yeah, why did you buy that? So, but it is, I love the ability to be able to kind of to try things on. My friend Melinda and I went with some friends to Japan. She was part of my little research expedition. And so we took a day trip and we went to north in Japan to trying to think of the town, but it's where Lika Castle is.
Oh, I'm
And
so jealous. I would have loved to gone to Lika Castle.
well, it was really it was an adventure just getting there. So we loved that. But the day we were there, it was our my three friends, myself and them, and one little girl that was it was her birthday. She was turning like 5, and her mother. We were the only ones there, so we just had the whole place to ourselves. And I think that day, I just like wiped out the store. I just bought so much. I just loved it, and I was just buying and buying like crazy. And for what I spent, I could have bought like a single really nice vintage doll, and the dollar was very strong against the yen, so I just bought like crazy. And when I came home, it was the thing of like, okay, what did I buy that I absolutely loved, and what am I going to keep? And then, some of it went back to Melinda, and then some of it, has made its way into hands of other collectors. But sometimes when you're discovering something, you just want to just grab it all and then figure it out later.
Right. It's always such an interesting thing, to look back on a journey of collecting. I had talked to Julian about this experience I had in 2000 where I was watching this auction for a Build Lily doll in her tube, and she sold for $120, and I had been outbid at the last minute. And at the time, I thought, that is ridiculous. Who would spend that much on a clone? And because we have this, I think as collectors, as we go through our story, we can sometimes become snobs, like collector
Oh,
snobs.
absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
you get humble pie every once in a while to take you down a few notches. But I considered so many fashion dolls through the years just clone
Oh
garbage
yeah,
and didn't
absolutely.
really pay attention to their story, or pay attention to the fact that some of it was actually very original.
Right.
Yeah.
I had always dismissed anything that wasn't genuine Barbie, and there was an article written in Barbie Bazaar magazine in the late 90s that sort of detailed a dress that someone was claiming was like a Barbie prototype or Barbie sample or something like that. And I actually found one of those dresses and I was like, oh, I found this prototype Barbie dress. And I thought, you know what? There can't be this many of them.
Right.
Something is amiss here. And so I was researching at a museum in Kansas City and was going through their archive, and that's when I discovered a stack of premier doll togs catalogs, and they made doll clothing. And when Barbie was introduced, they started making Barbie clothing from pretty much the get go. And they were in Brooklyn, New York, and the lady that designed for them was actually from North Carolina, close to where I grew up. And so she designed all of these fabulous costumes for Barbie. They were made in the US. They were fabulously constructed and created great fabrics, but they weren't genuine Barbie. Well, I kind of discovered, the brand behind this prototype dress and had shared that on social media. But then I think everyone was looking at these images that I had taken of those catalogs going, oh my gosh, I have number 907. And oh my God, I've got number 93. And so suddenly, I think that the stock rose in the clone market because I think everyone was seeing these fabulous, well-made garments and they were very appealing. And so um, there was a whole discovery in that. And some of the clone dolls, by by my own admission, are amazing. Like I love like the Unita Miss Suzette dolls. I think they're
Oh,
adorable
yes.
and
Yes,
such
me
a
too.
bizarre body construction. That doll is very unusual, but
Unusual, yeah.
yeah. But there's so many clone dolls that really are amazing. And yeah, and I always tell the stories that when I started collecting and would get like a Barbie collection, there would be all of this stuff and I would just kind of like give it to friends or whatever. And when I was in college, I got collections, and throughout that like winter semester at college, I gave away three of these weird dolls that came with these collections because my friends thought they were cool. And I gave away three Blythe dolls. And
I
now that's
actually was
before
wondering if that's what you were gonna say.
and that is before Gina Grand wrote the book on This Is Blythe, and everyone discovered Blythe and everything went crazy. The going rate at that moment was probably $15, but I gave them away. And so yeah, nothing makes me more nauseated now to see oneself for like, $3,000, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I gave that away. So live and learn.
Live and learn, live and learn. Well, in today's market, I mean, there's so many new collector dolls that literally within a year are worth more than vintage antique dolls, you know?
Right, right. That's so true. And I mean, some of these fashion dolls are coming out. They're such limited editions and there's such variations in the small editions that it makes them very desirable. And it's kind of like creating or collecting art. You have this small window of time and an opportunity, and it's like you have to seize that and grab that because like I know with like Nob Seacon doing the Anouk doll that it is, he does like one collection a year or so, and they're very limited, and it's like you either get them or you're out of luck.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so it's fun to see these new creations, and it's sort of like like I said, for me, having kind of collected and sort of having everything that I kind of wanted with Barbie, it's fun when there's something like that to anticipate and look for.
So kind of coming into other fashion dolls, what is something, or what are other fashion dolls that greatly like spark your interest or that you love to collect?
Well, I'll go back to the dawn of time, but I started with Barbie and I joined a regular doll club, and I discovered very quickly that, the concept of fashion doll is not really anything that's new. It's been around forever. And so my collection now starts with a doll that's from about 1860,
Oh,
which we consider, they call it a French fashion doll or poupée beau. That's, made in France around that time, and it was kind of like the Barbie of its day. At the time that these were created, there were around 150 boutiques in Paris that sold dolls, doll clothing, accessories, trousseaux, and all the accoutrements for that type of doll. It was a bustling business, and so I don't have many, but I have a few, and I love collecting clothes and accessories. And I add a little bit each year, not a lot, but it's those are kind of prizes that in my collection. And then all the way to I love sort of like the 1920s. So I have a fashion doll from the 1920s that was a sort of flapper style doll, and so that was cool. But I I love the Takara and Japanese dolls that were done in the 60s, starting
mhm.
in 67 with Lika. And as I was just starting collecting, is about the time that Mattel licensed Takara in Japan to make their version of Barbie.
Yeah.
And they actually did like a news story here in the US that Barbie was invading Japan, so to speak. And I want to get a Japanese Barbie. And so, that was, and it took me like 5 years to figure out how I would get a Takara Barbie doll. But I kind of hit the ground running. And so I have a very interesting collection of those. And those are some of my favorite dolls. And you'll hear me say favorite a lot because everything is my favorite. But I love any kind of doll that has like a wardrobe. I love,
Yeah.
I'm also very creative minded, but I love any sort of doll that has like a supporting sort of thing of
Cast?
like, well, more like like it's attached to like patterns or sewing or something creative, or there's sort of an expanding world for the doll. I love ephemera and like paper and that sort of thing. So I'm always looking when I'm in Europe or in Japan or whatever. It's like, oh look, here's an old doll pattern, and then trying to find a doll that would have used that pattern. So I love that sort of thing. So I'm very textile driven, and so I love learning about the past and history, especially with clothes and the toy and doll world. So that's
Yeah. I
something
loved
that kind of
collecting
drives me.
booklets. I have like
Oh yeah,
binders full of booklets in like little like baseball card pockets or whatever, and
the
I have all these
perfect thing for
booklets.
that.
Yeah, and I have them like all organized for years, so I like Barbie, so I can flip through and grab all whatever booklet I want to look through or whatnot. But I've always been in love with the booklets and the Takara Barbie. I think the first time that I'd ever seen one, I was a kid and I had this really good friend down the street that was Vietnamese, and he had this it was like a comic book, but in the back of the comic book there was toys,
Yes.
and that was the first time that I had seen one, and I was gobsmacked. I was like, "What is that? I want that. That is so beautiful and cool."
Oh
And it
yeah.
wasn't until I think I was, gosh, I think it wasn't until I was like 19 that I found my first one at a Value Village of all
Right.
places with cut hair, and I rerouted her with that horrible curly craft hair you bought, you know.
Oh yeah.
And, yeah, and she was very pale, and I used this black, and it turned out it wasn't good. But but just the following year, I went to a doll show and this lady had a silver box, like a metal silver box, and it must have been a cookie tin or something. And it had like three Takara Barbies and some fashions in it.
Mhm.
And I was just like beside myself. And then, of course, when the internet started with eBay and everything, I started finding them and collecting.
Right.
And through the years, my one of my biggest grails as far as Takara was concerned was the I'm probably gonna butcher how this is pronounced, but Peachy Peachy
Oh,
Lika.
Peachy Peachy Rika.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. And
And that
I
doll is so rare.
yeah, and so I was I was in my early 20s and I was online and I was always looking at lots, like Barbie
Right.
lots and things like that. And this auction appeared and it was just clothes on someone's floor, doll clothes and stuff that was just poured onto this horrible carpet and photographed from up above. So you can kind of spot things. All I saw was an arm and a leg. The doll was face down, and I was like, that's a Peachy Peachy Lika. I just knew it. I didn't even see her face or anything. And I won this lot. I was freaking out the whole time thinking someone else was going to notice this or something.
Right.
But I won this lot for like $63 and it got to me and it was her and she was minty, but
Wow.
she had no original clothing, no shoes or anything. It was all just Barbie stuff that she was just, randomly thrown in. But just as fast as I had got her, probably the next year, I went through having to do an emergency move, and I ended up letting her go. And it was so heart-wrenching for me because I really loved her. But it
Right.
was a sacrifice that I had to make at the time, and I've been looking for one ever since. And they do pop up, but for really crazy prices.
They're usually very expensive. And when we were in Japan, we visited so many places that sell vintage dolls and that sort of thing. And probably out of 20 shops, we never even saw one. So they're just
Yeah.
super, super rare. I do have one, but mine has cut hair. So I mean,
Well, that's what I was coming to literally yesterday. There was an auction that had been going on for this past week that I've been watching, and it was a cut hair one. And she had started the auction out at $10. And I've been watching it, and literally up until like the last like 10 seconds, she was still at just like $67 or something like that.
wow.
And I put in a bid literally in like the last 3 seconds. I just clicked it and was like, we'll see what happens. I won her for like
Oh,
$146,
wow. That's
which
great.
I was mind blown.
That is awesome. So I'm so happy you got her. That is great.
Me too. I
That's
mean,
great.
I've never she's kind of like the number one Barbie in that world.
Yeah.
And
And
I've never had an experience with a number one Barbie. And I've been collecting since I was tw like 12, 13, like full on, going to flea markets, antique stores, doll clubs, like it's been my whole life. And I only had one experience where it was like a woman had passed away and the daughters were selling their mom's collection and they had invited our doll club over to have first look or shopping or
right.
whatever. And there was this huge Christmas tree box that was just literally full of naked bubble cuts, ponytails, all vintage
Wow.
dolls, hard leg, straight legged dolls, but they were all naked in this huge Christmas tree box. And I was like going through them and I saw this ivory leg sticking out
Uh,
and I pulled it out and it was a number two,
uh-huh.
brunette. And I went to the ladies and I'd asked them, like, how much do you want for this doll? And I think I was about 21 years old. And they said, oh, $50. They looked at each other.
Wow.
I I felt so much guilt because their mom had died, like, and I'm a Cancer and
Yeah.
I'm very emotional and love everyone. And I just was like, you ladies, do you know what this is? And I told them, I was like, you should put this on eBay. And they gave me a really great deal on two number three Barbies with nipples that were beautiful, and I got a good
Right.
deal. But to this day, I still kind of kick myself that like, because that was the one opportunity that I
That's golly
presented itself.
karma. I always say that's golly karma, and it will return some way, shape, or form. It will. And I always love hearing people's number one stories and how they found them and what they paid and stuff. My first one I bought when I was about 16 years old, at a flea market that was more like an antique show at the time. By today's standards, you'd consider it like an antique show. And I paid $400 for it. And that was like, every penny I had like in my savings account at that
Yeah.
time. And was just so thrilled. I think she had a little bit of a ponytail trim and she was very pale, but just excited to get her. And I added a number two later, and then I got a better number one, and I sort of traded up and sold that one to a friend, sold her back to me. And so it's I always feel like at the right when you're ready at the right moment, it'll come to you. So
Yes, yes. Well, I've been projecting. I think on one of my videos I had, I even was like, "Hey, my birthday's coming." It's
hey, send me a number one. So
Right, right. I've never had one. But yeah, I definitely I think that when you were talking about the early first 2 years of Barbie, that resonates with me a lot because it was all definitely before my time or my childhood. But one of my first early experiences with Barbie was my mom had a number one Barbie booklet in her vanity, in her
nice.
bedroom, and it was in a drawer. And I would go and she would yell at me, stay out of my stuff, you know. But when she was gone or at work, I'd get into that drawer and pull out that Barbie booklet and just really fantasize about it. And so growing up, I've always been very much into just early ponytails. I never really. I have appreciation as a collector for everything, but I never really got into swirls or bubble cuts or American Girls.
Same.
I liked Poodle Bang early,
Yeah.
Barbies. That was my thing. And then I jumped to the mod era, like you, and then I jumped to the superstar era. I kind of go boop
Yeah.
boop.
And I definitely identify with that. And you talking about that booklet, those fashion booklets to me they're amazing. And I always jokingly say, like, if I'm in a bad mood, I can sit down with that first Barbie booklet and just leaf through it, and it just puts me in a different mindset. It is really incredible. The illustration, it's such an iconic piece of ephemera from that era, and it documents not only that doll and Mattel, but just like fashion illustration and fashion at the time. It's just such an incredible little treasure. I love
Do we
I love
know
those
who the
booklets.
illustrator was?
Those early ones we do not. I know later Alan Adler worked for Mattel, and that's when they started doing a slightly more realistic sort of illustration around 64. Those booklets there, and he did a lot of illustration, and he was a sort of I think he did like some covers for like comic books or graphic novels. He is really kind of incredible person, but I think he kind of carried them through to the end of the decade in the 60s, with some illustrations. But they had a lot of graphic and art people that worked for them, when they acquired in the mid to late 60s, Standard Plastic Products, which made all of the cases and stuff. They were actually a separate division or a separate company, and they were in New Jersey, and Mattel bought them in the late 60s. And I think it was Ilana Dancer that had been working for them, and maybe her sister. And they did some similar illustrations at the time. And I think they kind of are credited with some of that sort of superstar Barbie look. So they're pretty recognizable with their style. But I love all of that. And I actually had heard rumor that the original illustration was Cynthia Lawrence. And Cynthia Lawrence, she had illustrated, I think, some of the Random House books, but she had worked for Carson Roberts advertising agency, which handled a lot of the Mattel account, and she would draw the storyboards for the commercials.
Oh wow.
And I have a copy of a couple of the storyboards, and it's real interesting in that when you look at it, you're like, maybe that is her that did those early booklets, but it's a very sort of iconic style. So I love all of that. So
So Adler must have been kind of doing the stuff like when they got into mod era and were doing also like Chris, Tootie and Chris, that was a little pre-mod, but would that be something he would
about
have?
that about this, I would say the most iconic book is probably that 1966 book where it's like the nine faces with the red cover and the American Girl.
Yes, yeah.
That's pretty much his style, and I would say he did a lot of the mod stuff. And they also had people that worked for them because I actually bought the archives from Richard Haffey. They called him Dick Haffey, and he did a lot of concept drawings. So they would come and say, we want to do this booklet for Tootie. We need this, and we want to cover this in the booklet or whatever. And he would sketch it all out very quickly and do like a mock-up, and then they might take it and have a more fine-tuned drawing done for the cover and that sort of thing. And so they would kind of work that all in. But Mattel in their research and development or research and design department had probably in 63 or 64, they probably had 200 people in there. So there were a lot of people that were figuring out packaging and art and graphics. And it wasn't just Barbie, it was all the Mattel toys. So it was really a fascinating
Skittles.
Skittles, the toy guns, the thing maker and all of the vacuum form and all of that stuff. They were figuring all of that out.
One of
So
my
they
best
were
friends collects all of that, the thing maker, vacuum for like all that stuff. Like it has an amazing collection of that. But he also collected toys pre-Barbie Mattel. So he has some really interesting, like some music boxes
mhm,
and like oddball toy things, and of course the furniture that was
right.
actually pre-Barbie but got kind of used for, or
Yes,
into
the
Barbie's
the Mattel
world.
Modern Furniture.
Yeah.
It was I think it was Elliot Handler. He was the brainchild behind it, but it was designed and manufactured by a company in Japan called Taihei Toko, and everyone's like, oh, it's Scandinavian furniture. And I'm like, well, if you've ever looked at vintage furniture in Japan, this is so Japanese. I love that furniture. It's great, but it's just slightly too small for Barbie, but it still
Mhm.
works, but it's just a
Little
little
too
small.
small. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it was originally made for 10-inch fashion dolls.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
Suzette or Jill.
right.
It's really, it's beautifully made. I love that furniture. And of course I have a little bit of that in my collection because how can you not?
Right.
But I love it. I love it.
So, what do you think that, in all these years of collecting and whatnot, what do you think is the most obscure knowledge about Barbie that you've found out as a historian and collector?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, when they started the production of Barbie, there was like a 70% failure rate. When they were doing the rotationally cast vinyl pieces and parts, they were getting air bubbles. The fingers wouldn't fill in, the nose wouldn't fill in. There'd be a bubble somewhere. And at the time, they were getting this material, the vinyl, from I think B.F. Goodrich. That Seymour Adler had gone, I think, to Chicago and kind of taken a little bit of a crash course in how to rotationally cast and use its vinyl. And it was very different than the vinyl that was being used in Japan. So they were going with this vinyl, and um, they were having like a 70% failure rate. So what they were trying to figure out to do is like, what are we going to do with this? Because we can't just take this sort of a bath on this cost because it was expensive. So what they did is all of those dolls that were flawed or damaged or whatever, they ground them up and remelted them and reused the material. However, I since learned from a friend who's a chemical engineer that generally when you do that sort of thing, the material is no longer stable. It's no longer
Yeah.
color fast. And so that sort of that sort of explains why the ones, twos, and threes fade and do not hold their color. And we know that that kind of got figured out by the time they got the four. And the four is actually a different kind of vinyl. But I think kind of realizing that this product and this project, was so fraught with problems, but the Mattel team and the Japanese people at Kokusai Boeki Kaisha Limited that were doing this manufacturing for Mattel, I think they were so determined to make this successful that I think they would have done anything to
Yeah.
ensure that there was a good product. And that's the thing during my research that I've loved is discovering how the Japanese people working on this were so passionate about making sure it was absolute perfection. It was
Yeah.
incredible. So I would say that's probably one of the things that I've kind of discovered that was interesting, but just learning little details here and there. And something I just recently discovered, and I shared this at my recent event, is um, Charlotte Johnson in an interview was describing the solo and the spotlight outfit. And if you for those that don't know, it's that clingy black glittery dress with the fishtail hem, and she has long black gloves, and she carries this pink chiffon scarf. And she was saying that she got the inspiration from that from Hildegard, who was the leading chanteuse at the Waldorf. And I'm like, Hildegard, like who is Hildegard? And I started Googling and couldn't really find anything. So I have a friend who is an antique doll dealer, and he knows all about theater, and he's much significantly older than me. I won't give his age now that or his name now that I've said he's older. But I called him up and I said, can you tell me who Hildegard was? And he goes, you mean the singer? And I said, yes. And then he dove right into singing like her most famous song. I can't remember what it was, but he says, yes, she was a singer. She used to perform at the Waldorf in New York, and she played the piano, and she wore opera length gloves while she played the piano, which I think is kind of a unusual thing. He said, but her trademark was always she carried a long handkerchief that she always performed with, and she would dab her brow, and it was just like a dramatic kind of thing that she. So I ended up finding all of this stuff on the internet once I discovered she was not just Hildegard, she was the incomparable Hildegard. And she performed, and she was the first singer of a lot of this like 1940s wartime classics and standards that we all know. And it was interesting to think that Charlotte Johnson was getting her inspiration for this teenage fashion doll, thinking back to a time when she was in her early 20s and probably going to a performance on a special occasion and seeing someone perform that she thought was so glamorous, and how that imprinted on her brain that when it was time for her to do something that was glamorous, that is what she went to. And I just thought that was really cool that behind everything that we see with Barbie, there's a story, there's a detail, there
Yeah.
was an
And
inspiration.
it's
And
such an
I love that.
iconic Barbie fashion now,
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
And I will be honest with you, they reproduced it like a million times, and I've had it a million times, and I like bored with it. I don't even care about
Right,
it.
right.
But once I heard that, I'm like, oh, that needs to take center stage in my collection now. We need to give that some prominent sort of
Yeah, it
space.
gives it some more importance, and there's some substance behind it. Talking about Japan, I was really curious to pick your brain if you had any knowledge. A friend of mine, Ernesto Padro Campos, who does dolldom photography, he had done a series of photos and really was inspired and very into the Japanese Midge doll.
Yes.
And he really tried to do a deep dive on information, and it seems nobody has any information, and it's very hard to get information on her. No one knows who sculpted her. Nobody, and I was just curious if you have through your years heard any information. I mean, I'm guessing just like the Japanese Barbie, they didn't like the look of Midge and decided to recreate her for their, market.
Well, and I will say that I don't think they were overly keen on Barbie either. I think they
Yeah.
were looking for their own sort of aesthetic. And one thing I do know is when it came time for Barbie to kind of make the scene there in Japan and they were going to start marketing it there, they wanted to kind of do their own thing. So they kind of handled everything and the costuming and stuff like that. I think they used a lot of existing stuff that had been designed by the American designer Charlotte and all the other designers at the time, but they added in some stuff that was handled there. And I would have a feeling that Japanese Midge was probably sculpted there because they like a sort of larger head and they go for a larger, wider set eye. And it all goes back to that sort of the illustrations that they have done forever, where it's just very different than what we're used to. They do
Yeah.
a larger. It's that sort of kawaii, which is
Yeah.
the cuteness. They
Right.
like
There
that
was an
more than that
artist.
sultry sort of glamour that we liked. So
Yeah. There was an artist, Rune, I think they were called.
Runaito, yes,
Yes,
Runaito,
and when I saw that Japanese midge, the first thing I thought of was him because I was
right?
like, because I knew his style was so popular.
Yeah, his style is it's very similar, and Junichi Nakahara, I think, also did a very similar look, but it was glamorous, but it was like Japan glamorous.
Hmm.
It had their own sort of aesthetic, which was important to them. But I don't know who sculpted it, and and we even struggled to kind of know who sculpted a lot of the Barbie stuff. So
Yeah.
um, we've tried to uncover a lot of that. There's a lot of people early on that took credit for a lot of the early Barbie stuff, but as best we know, they took the Build Lily and they gave the Build Lily to 5 or 6 California-based sculptors and kind of gave them a list of things that's like, hey, we want this changed, that changed. And so everyone kind of um, turned in what they created.
Do you think that's where we got those resin Barbies from?
I think that that's well, that's a long story there, but I kind of feel that there is some connection there.
Yeah.
Because one of those came from there was an estate sale that happened at one of the former sculptors, and my friend found one of those there. Now, I know they're crazy. They've been found in Mexico, so I don't know if it's something that someone just sort of pirated the molds and kind of came up with their own thing. But it's such a
Right.
weird sort of who knows. I mean, and it's
Yeah.
there's no marking, there's no indication of that. But Cy Wood was one of the sculptors that took credit. And then there's Anthony Bologna that's in California. They both were kind of outspoken that they had worked on it, but I kind of think that they probably gave those lilies, they did it. And so once they got all of that work back, they probably said, well, we like the hands on this one. We like how they did the torso on this one, and this one's face is the best. So they cobbled together and made the ultimate doll that they would then make the molds from. So I kind of think that's what happened, but hardly anybody that was there has, is still above ground. So it's kind of hard
Yeah.
to determine
No.
for it with a definitive measure that what we're doing is saying is correct. So
And I wonder, even people like Ruth Handler, I wonder if she would even have known, to remember or think on, because I'm sure too on the time in the time, a lot of that was there was so much going on, and it was so fast trying to get things developed, trying to get them onto the market.
Right. And I've gone through a lot of her um archive that's at the Schlesinger Library in Massachusetts. I've gone through a lot of that, and she preserved a lot, and there's a lot of story that comes out of that is not in her Dream Doll book, but there's a lot based on manufacturing that's in there. But there were so many people involved, and this is something she handed over to Jack Ryan, who was the head of the R&D department, and he kind of handled that. And then once he got to a certain level, he handed it off to someone else, and then suddenly there's 50 people working on this
I
instead of like one. So it's that whole sort of analogy of like you're in the there's 10 of you in the room with an elephant and it's dark, and everybody is grabbing a different part of the elephant and describing something different. So I think everyone has a memory, and whether it's right or wrong, it's like those few memories that we have is what we kind of work with. And Jack Ryan left an enormous archive to his daughters that I've gone through, and there's like photography and images, not as much of like the manufacturing process, but of the team in Japan that worked um, on the project, and sort of candid photos around Japan. And he also told a lot of stories, and I think a lot of his stories were told from the perspective of his experience. And so I think Jack carried a lot of weight and shared a lot. And I think he was sort of like a large personality. I think it rubbed a few of the other Mattel people the wrong way, and there was always sort of like a a polite squabble between some of them, including Ruth Handler.
right.
It's those stories and that stuff that get preserved that we get to use to try and document this history.
Mhm. So besides Stacy, obviously being your like childhood favorite doll, what would you say today? What would be your favorite Barbie besides Stacy? Something that you just really like connect with and love?
Uh, just one.
I know the house is burning. You
Um,
got to grab
it
one.
has been, yeah. Well, it's funny because here's what I'll tell you. I love my Stacy, but when I was playing with my cousin, she had Sweet 16 Barbie. It had just come
Oh,
out, and it came with these little tiny stickers. Like one was lilac and one was strawberry. You could scratch them, and I still can smell that smell. It's really funny, but I love that doll, and I probably have like 20 or 30 in my collection because you can never be too rich, too thin, or have too many Sweet 16 Barbies. But
right.
I will tell you, I one of my favorite dolls of all time is the Feeling Groovy Barbie that came out in '86.
Yeah, Billy Boy.
Um,
Yeah.
the Billy Boy doll. I love that doll because it's sort of like an amalgamation of everything that I love. I love the pale complexion, the red lip, the black hair, the sort of changeable outfit. It was so 80s. It was so glamorous, and I really loved that doll. But
Me too. I actually, when I talked to Billy Boy, this has been 7 or 8 years ago, and we were chatting. I had mentioned the promo shots of that doll having the hairpiece in her hair that was like pink and loud. It looked kind of Lady Lovely locks or something.
yeah, it was.
But I had asked him about that because obviously it didn't end up in production with the doll, and he had said like, "Oh, I actually have a few of those. You can have one. I'll send you one." It didn't. He never sent me one, but
Of course not.
but yeah, I actually very much felt a connection with that doll as well. More the illustrations and the fashion. The doll itself with the PTA hands and everything.
Yeah,
I think at the time she was really dynamic. For me now, I don't love her as much, but the fashion to me is always like, oh,
Right, right.
and the illustrations with her bangs and her hair just down with the sunglasses and
Yeah.
how they did that whole thing was so beautiful.
And at the time, based on what was available and what we were seeing, it was so dramatically different than all of
Yeah.
the blonde Barbies we were seeing. It was just so dramatic. I actually own one of the hair pieces that was done with the actual metal thing, and I have the coat that was done in the brocade as opposed to like
Oh,
the
wow.
laminated foil. And that's one of my, I just absolutely love that.
That's so
Um,
awesome.
so I love those little treasures like that sometimes kind of make their way into your collection. So
Yeah, yeah. No, and it's so funny what, dolls kind of speak to people. It's always interesting to hear what their experience like. Your Sweet 16 Barbie is my Pink and Pretty Barbie,
right.
where it's like I can't leave one if I see one at a decent price, even though I
Yes.
have 50 of them. I'm like, "Oh yeah, another Pink and
Yeah.
Pretty
It's
Barbie."
the same. And it's the same. And as I collected, I wanted all of this early stuff and these fabulous outfits. And I've done the superstar and and I love all of that. And just recently I've really been loving like all of this like crazy like early 70s like Best Buys and stuff. It's like at a time when I would have like just like thrown this in like the dollar bin, like who cares? And now I'm like
Right.
paying attention. It's like, what am I doing? So but I think I'm just getting an appreciation for something that's different. And I change focus here and then. Now and every once in a while, I just kind of change my eye a little bit. So just started looking at things a little different.
So tell me, I'm a newbie here as far as information with this. Tell me a little bit about Bradley Con. What is this about,
Well,
Bradley?
first of all, I call it my swell event. My business is the Swell Doll Shop, and we officially 11 years ago. I'll back up a little further. One of my doll clubs, which was a non-Barbie club, wanted to do an event, and they wanted to do this like 250 people, and they wanted to do all of this stuff like that, and they were arguing back and forth. I said, "Hey, why don't we do like a small little luncheon? I have all of these dolls that we can use as the souvenir. We can get someone to dress them. I have a friend that can do the graphics. So we can do the packaging. We'll do all this. I'll do the program. This will give us an opportunity to learn how to work together and how to do all this stuff like that." Well, they were all kind of doll snobs and they turned up their nose and said, "We're not doing Barbie." And I came home and I told Chris, I'm like, I cannot believe these old biddies will not go along with my idea. And I was like, can't believe this, and this I'm just crushed. And he's like, just do it yourself. And I'm like, wait, I can do that? And so we did my very first event. I had just started my research or had just ready to do sort of share my research about Charlotte Johnson. And so we did the first swell event was called 1958. And we talked about setting up the production for the original Barbie. I had 38 people there. Um, we did a really cute little outfit. My friend Diana Lemieux sewed them all for us, and my friend Allison did this great packaging. And it was really kind of a fun event. And as soon as it was over, everyone was like, well, are you going to do another one next year?
Right.
And I did this in a restaurant. It was a luncheon. There were 38 people. We had a few little prizes, and we raised money for a museum. And and I was like, I guess so. And so we did the second one, and like the second we had 55 people, and it wasn't long until we were about 60 people. We were in this restaurant and just having a great time. And then we had so many people coming in from out of town that we said, well, we'll go to this other restaurant. We'll do like a Friday night, just sort of like meet and greet. So it just became sort of like this like fun little event. And then COVID happened, and we were literally, I do my event in the spring. So we were like literally like, I don't know, 2.5 months away from doing my event. COVID happened, shutdown happened, everything's closed down. And I'm freaking out because I'm like, I've got 70 people that have paid me, $200 to come to this luncheon. I'm going to have to give their money back. And oh my God, I'm just going to be broke. And Chris said, Bradley, call your friend Rachel Hoffman. She does this virtual thing. Just have her talk you through it. So during COVID, for like 2 years, we did the Swell event via virtual. We did our program online. We shipped everybody everything. And so after that, we went back to the restaurant. We did an in-person thing, but then we also did, I called it hybrid. We also did an online event. And every year I would share new research I discovered. We would have a themed program. We did something about Jack Ryan. We've done stuff about other designers that work for Mattel. So the restaurant that we were working with closed. And so we had to go to a new venue. So we decided to go to a hotel. So I think in 2022, 23, I think it's 23. Can't remember. It feels like yesterday, but it might be longer ago. But we went to the local Marriott. We worked a deal with them, and we do a 2-day event. It has a meet and greet dinner. We have a banquet. We have a sales room. We always do a special exhibit that shows, one year we showed prototypes. One year we showed Barbie artwork from a friend's collection. So I always look at it as being very sort of scholarly and educational.
Yeah.
Everyone else says it's a lot of fun. I think when we moved to the hotel, my friend Sean, he started referring to it as Bradley Con. It's hard for me to say that because it feels very, I don't know. It's just kind of like, but so it's been, we've been jokingly referring to it as Bradley Con. So, but we now have around 120 to 130 people.
Wow.
This year was our largest yet. And it's kind of serendipitous how that happened, or not really serendipitous, but it's kind of, weird how it happened. But last year when we announced our dates for this past spring, we announced it at our banquet, and we always give everybody the opportunity to sign up and give a deposit for their next year to secure their spot. So we had we announced our date, and we had about 9 or 10 people that came to me at the end of it and said, Bradley, I'm going to give you my deposit check, but I'm not going to be here. And I said, why? What's wrong? He said, well, I'm going to Italy. It's the same time as the Italian convention. I'm going to Italy. And I'm like, I was like, I never even thought that in like Podunk, North Carolina, I needed to check when like there was an international convention going on. So I was kind of heartbroken because some of my favorite people were not going to be able to come. So a month later, we go to Barbie convention, and people were like, hey, Bradley, I want to come to your event. And I'm like, okay, well, here I've got some people that have canceled. So I signed up like 8 or 9 people, and thought, well, let me get home and do my paperwork and make sure that I can accommodate these people and see how many people really aren't planning on coming. So I sent a few people messages, are you coming or are you not coming? And so when I got home, I was like, okay, I've got 129 people registered. I'm not registering any more people because these 9 people are not coming. And tragically, I think a month later, Mario and Gianni passed away, which is very sad. And the convention did not happen. So suddenly I had 10 people that weren't planning on coming that were suddenly coming. And now I'm like, oh my God, this banquet room will only hold 130 people. And now I have like 141 people that are coming. And so my husband and myself and my nieces, they helped me with my event. I was like, okay, well, first of all, we don't have a place to sit. We just got to figure out what to do. So over the course of time, a couple of people dropped out, and because suddenly I had gotten all of this like attention with Bradley Con, had people like, I want to be on your wait list. I want to come. And so like, I had like 20 people on the wait list, and I'm like, oh my God, well, first of all, I have to have like 9 people cancel just for Chris and I to have a place to sit down and have dinner. And so it's like, oh, and I would like to grow it, but we love the hotel and the space that we do it in. and it's also kind of great that it's kind of intimate. We love it.
Right.
It's a lot of fun. We have centerpieces, and we do a special costume each year that's very kind of meaningful to whatever the subject is we're talking about. So, but we've covered a lot of topics. It's been fun. I would just kind of say it's very
Exclusive. It's very
self-serving because
exclusive.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's very, it's what I love about it. It's I was able to look at, because I've been to so many different kinds of conventions and conventions everywhere, and what I was able to do was like, what is everything I love about all the conventions that I go to, and what makes me happy, and what annoys me that I will never do at my convention. And so that's what I've kind of done. And I think everybody that comes has a good time. I love everybody that comes. We have a lot of fun. It's
I
a
know
lot of
Bill
fun.
had a great time.
Oh,
He got his
he was
birthday
great. Oh,
celebrated.
we had a great time. I don't know if Bill told you, he had actually put me on the trail of a collection of stuff that was someone that had worked at Mattel, and so we got this thing of lots of patterns and fabric and textiles and stuff, but there were a few little prototypes in there. So we gave him a prototype Best Buy outfit for his birthday, along with,
Oh,
we all sang to him. It was a lot of fun. So, I mean, it was a gift for all of us to have Bill Greening there for his birthday, but I hope he had a great time.
he definitely did. Yeah. That's so awesome. I love that. I lived in for a couple years. I lived in North Carolina.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah, in this tiny, tiny, tiny town. I think the population, I'm not kidding, was like 128 people. They just had a red apple, that's all, and a post office, but it was called Harrellsville. And it was about 15 minutes. The next biggest town, which was small, was a Hosky.
Okay,
Um,
I know where you are. I know
yeah,
exactly. So you're like on the close to the coast.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I've not
So,
heard of Harrodsburg. That's interesting.
it was
So I
so tiny. I was 18, and talk about a culture shock because I grew up in the Northwest in Oregon,
right.
and so I went clear across, followed a
Yeah.
boy
I was gonna
and
say, welcome to Hooterville.
right. But yeah,
Oh, that's
it
so
was a fun
great.
experience. I don't, there's some really magical things about living there that I really enjoyed. And then, but I'm such a weenie being an Oregonian. I have webbed feet, like, and I have to have cool weather
Right,
and
right. And North Carolina, like especially this time of year, it can be brutally hot and humid. Isn't
yeah.
it Husky? Isn't that where Melodom is from?
Yeah, yeah. And
So
that's
that's
how we met because me and the guy that I was with, his mom used to carpool with Mel to go to church.
how
And
fun.
so we had this inn, and Gene had first come out at that time, and we actually looked through the yellow pages and found his mom, called her. She was excited that her son had these fans, she was really sweet. And we ended up meeting Mel when he had come to visit his mom the next time and went out to a cafe and had our doll signed and
That is
everything. Yeah.
so cool. That is
Yeah.
so cool.
Back in the old days where you could stalk people and not get in trouble
I
for
know
it.
they've made it so hard now.
Yeah, it's so hard to stalk people these days.
Exactly. That caller ID gets you every time.
Right.
So, but that is so cool. I didn't know that you had been a North Carolinian for a brief
For a
period of
brief
time.
time, yeah.
So,
I was
that
out
is
there
really cool.
picking butter beans and,
Well, I love that part of the state. It's very beautiful. So, my family is from the eastern part of the state, so we're always down that way. So,
I'd never
but it's
seen bugs that big in my entire life.
we've always jokingly said that the state bird is actually a mosquito. So, 'cause
Right.
they're everywhere. It's crazy. But back to my swell event or Bradley Con, we've done officially 11 of them. We celebrated 10 years at this one, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work because I always jokingly say they have one, um, figuring all this out and making all this happen, negotiating and and doing it all. I have a huge team of people that help. My friends Ken and David always help, and Sean, Melinda, Cindy, my friend Jenny kind of does my social. So we've got like a great team that kind of helps us all out. But um, it's a team effort. But I always jokingly say, although we're working together, the buck always stops with me. But I always want to figure out a way to make sure that we educate and enlighten people as to the history of not only Barbie but some other dolls as well. We have a lot of fun doing that. So
I love that. Well, are you ready for some rapid fire Barbie questions?
Yes, yes. Can
Okay.
you hear me? I think my
The
AirPod may
sound
have
changed a little bit, but I hear you.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Let's do, it gave me a secondary list, but I'm gonna go with um Pink Box or Collector Edition.
um, pink box,
Rooted lashes or painted lashes?
rooted lashes,
Silkstone or vinyl?
vinyl,
Um, Favorite Barbie friend besides herself?
PJ.
One Barbie item every collector should own at least once.
Oh, the second Barbie dream house.
Most surprising thing you've ever learned about Barbie history.
That Barbara Handler's nickname was Babs and not Barbie.
Biggest collecting regret.
Selling a prototype skirt that had Charlotte Johnson's initials on it.
Oh, that yeah, that would be that's a good one.
Still
Um,
crying.
oh no, no. Holy Grail still missing from your collection.
um, Sun Francie.
Ooh, yeah, she's beautiful. Favorite Barbie accessory ever made.
The miniature Barbie, the tiny little Barbie that came with the skipper outfit. I have probably 40 of them.
Oh, I love. Do you have Tinkerbells too from like
I
little
do.
Kittles? Yeah,
And the
yeah.
case and the skirts. I love those things. Those are my favorite
Yes.
things. But
If you could spend one day at Mattel during any decade, which decade would you choose?
I would choose I honestly would choose like 1959 Charlotte Johnson and just watch her work. She was to me was really genius. They were figuring out this patterns and this that's some geometry that I obviously didn't pay enough attention to in math class. But I would love to see her work and see her in action. That
Yeah,
would have been I find that would be amazing.
that would be amazing. Best Barbie fashion ever created.
Mm. Oh, that's hard. There's, like every generation, there's like something I love. But I will say, as far as classicness and versatility, the 1959 commuter set. As a kid, I would have loved the play value of the two different blouses and those like two different looks and the hat box. As a kid, I would have loved all those little tiny little bits in the gloves and the hat box and everything. So I'm going to say commuter set. Final
Yeah,
answer.
that's a good one, and it can be dressed down or dressed up.
Absolutely,
It was
with the
very
jewelry.
smart. And favorite Barbie face sculpt of all time.
Steffi.
Steffi. Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
She's a good one. My best friend really ruined her for me just because he calls her baby needs a bottle or whatever that
Oh
sculpt.
no.
And
Oh.
he's like, look at the baby doll. It's exactly the same lit. I was like, oh no, don't.
Oh.
I always think of her as just like like ready to kiss or something. I don't
Oh.
know.
I love that. I love that sculpt because I think when I was a kid, seeing like PJ and like the Sears Wish book, that was that face, and I just thought that was such a pretty face. So,
Yes,
I love all of those like 70s and 80s PJs that have the stuffy face. So that's
me
sort of classic
too.
for me.
And last question would be, what is the most underrated Barbie doll ever produced?
That's underrated Barbie dolls have produced. Hmm. I'm gonna go with Sweet 16 because
Yeah.
to me that there's like a mod element, but it's moving into the 70s. But that's all, she's Barbara Eden. She's got that shag Carol Brady hairdo. I mean, there's a lot going on there that is so of the moment. And I don't think hardly anybody pays her any attention. So I'm going to go with
No,
Sweet
and she's
16.
so, when I think of her, she's so simple and clean and pretty. Like
Yep.
her screening, like everything about her, I feel like she kind of, to me, feels like the number one or Totally Hair, where she very much owns her element of what she
Yes.
is supposed to be. Her design is very like,
It's just point. It's classic. It's just like on point. So I totally agree.
yeah,
So
I love that. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything that you feel like we need to make sure that we get in or talk about or
God, I feel like we've covered a lot, but I'm just very grateful that you're doing this. I think this is such a great thing for collectors. You had said earlier that community was important, and I believe with collectors that it is. Community is probably the best way to learn from your peers and network. I think that's just very important, and so I think what you're doing is great, and I'm looking forward to seeing your future podcasts with other people. So I'm very excited to be a part of this. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to have you. And it's so important to me because we have so many young collectors that are coming on board that never got to experience what we experienced, having Barbie Bazaar, Millers, all these things. And there's so many people that are part of this universe that helped elevate Barbie to where she is today I want to make sure have a platform where youth can come and learn about like Bill, Barry
Right.
Sturgill and and whatnot. I think it's so important.
I I I agree with that, and there are so many people that really laid the groundwork. Ruth Kronk, Kitty Stewart, Marl Davidson, people that were promoting shows and were writing articles, and Barry with his amazing photography I mean, he's like the Richard Avedon of the doll world. I mean, it's just incredible what so many of these people did, and maybe they did it out of business, but what they did is they created sort of like a longevity that's allowed the collector hobby to continue to exist. So it's just very important with that, and I think celebrating those people and celebrating the hobby in its infancy.
Mhm.
I felt like in the late 80s when Barbie Bazaar came out, I feel like everything kind of changed a little bit. It was just a different world. And I feel like suddenly there were all of these collectors. But when I
Based on what we've got as far as the collector community, even like on Facebook, it's just sort of mind blowing as to what we really have become. So
And the
it's really
Barbie
incredible.
movie, I mean, that like made
Oh my
it boom
God.
even more. It's
That
crazy.
that I probably owe Margot Robbie a paycheck because suddenly, my business increased immensely, and just the interest in the hobby just really skyrocketed. It was really such a moment. And I that the summer of 2023, the summer of Barbie, was just so phenomenal. For me, it was a good time. It was just a real happy time. The movie was amazing, and everything that was happening connected to the movie was incredible. So it just really, that's such a fun moment
It was
to look
amazing
back
to
on.
see the performance at the Oscars and stuff. It's like,
Oh yeah.
oh my God, like if I was a little kid and got to see that, I would have been like, oh, it was better than
Oh,
Madonna. Like, you
oh
know.
yeah, I agree. It was just incredible. And I'm like, we need to see that again. It's like we need to revisit that because it was really an iconic moment.
And I feel like it was so nice for people because all of a sudden people had a reason to dress up, to go to the movie, to, take pictures of everybody all in their pink in their.
We were in Florida and we went the first night, like the preview night, and we had scored some tickets somehow. And I threw on a pink shirt that I just happened to have thrown in my suitcase before we went to Florida, and we went off to the movies. And um, it was really interesting because I when we got there, I told Chris, I said, you know what? I'm really not that old, but I feel really old because we were the oldest people there. Everyone was young. Everybody was dressed up and it was just so exciting. And then being in the movie and hearing people cheer and laugh and then cry. And at that last moment when everything is just kind of going wonky in that movie, I was so sobbing that I was trying not to like sob loudly because it was that moment where you're trying not to cry and you're gonna do the
Right, right.
I was like so afraid I was gonna do that. But it was just so moving and it was just such a great moment. It was really incredible. It was really incredible.
And I think that people collectively needed something like that with the political climate and with COVID and with everything. It was
We
so nice
did.
to be able to have something to celebrate and to have fun with, you
It
know.
was so much fun. It was so much fun.
It was so
So
good.
I'm ready for part two or something.
Me
We need it.
too. We
We
need
need it.
some. Come on,
We
Margot.
need
We
it.
want to see you in more
Yeah,
fashions.
I love it. I'm ready for that. But it that was really great. So
Yeah. But
uh,
um but yeah, I think it's community is so important and also to have a platform for indie doll artists that are, that have been working hard for many, many years behind the scenes
yes,
doing their things. And I think that it's important as a community that we all lift each other up.
yes.
You know.
I think that's so important, and I'm glad that you're doing that. I just think it's really great because I know you have had your brand, and I have followed it and seen it evolve. And there are so many other people that probably are looking and seeing what you've been able to do and what Nob and what Julian have been able to do. It's like, can I do that? And I always say the more the merrier because I think that there is an audience for so much, and I think right now collectors are really craving um, something unique and different and special. And I think sometimes we're not seeing that at the doll aisle or
Right.
at Target. We're needing something more special, more unique, or that's more personal and not sort of like some watered down, amalgamated thing. Any kind of doll can be that, but I think we just right now people are wanting special, unique, and I think that's why when I go to Japan, I love going to like Lika Castle or because it's kind of like this week is Kisara week, and and so they're gonna pull out this Kisara head mold and they'll give her three different lip cover colors, three different hairstyles, and three different colors. So there's like 27 versions of that doll that's just available that week, and you just grab it. And we don't have something like that here. I don't.
No, and I hate
I
that we don't because I have to pay exorbitant prices on eBay to get those Lika Castle
I
dolls.
have to I have to tell you, I call this my gay guy math. But I was talking to Melinda, and Melinda was saying I'd buy like 15 or 20 of these like exclusive Lika Castle Jenny or Lika dolls on eBay, and she went with me, and so we both went. It was like supermarket sweep in that place. We were like the sales ladies were laughing, and God only knows what they were saying about us, but we were like grabbing everything. And um but what I told her is it's like for what let's just say it's like $100 that you buy one of those special dolls or whatever. That doll at $100 is probably 4,000 yen. And if you did penny to yen conversion, that would be $40. But the dollar is really strong right now, so you're getting like a 30% discount. So that dollar is really $27. And I said, well, Linda, let's do the math. And I said, buying it at $27 instead of, look at the savings we're getting, and then look at the savings we're getting on the outfits and the shoes and everything like that. I said, for what we save spending a year buying these $100 dolls, I said, we can fly to Japan and stay for about a week in a hotel and go to Leaky Castle. And she goes,
Yes.
what? I love the way you're doing this math. And so, it's like, let me justify yet another, 16-hour flight to Japan. But you should go.
I want to. I want
You
to.
should
When
go.
you come up with a plan for the two of us to make money for the trip, we're gonna
Okay.
go.